Welcome. This is the podcast of Care Austria with Andrea Bastorf-Hager.
A very warm welcome to the Care in Action podcast of Care Austria. Today another special edition because we are here in Bangkok, Thailand, hosted by Care Thailand. The name is Raks Thai. A very good morning, Kun Promboon.
Good morning, Andrea.
My special guest of today is Promboon Panitchpakdi. I call him Promboon. Thanks for hosting us, Promboon. Mm-hmm. He was born in the US but raised in Thailand. And after his university studies, he studied anthropology, sociology, and public administration. He started working in a ministry, and after that, he joined a US organization about family planning. Regional. Working in whole Asia, so he's very experienced in the whole region. And more than 30 years ago, he started to work with Care Thailand. And in the meantime, Care Thailand is independent from Care US because it all started at that time as a branch office of Care US. What was the occasion that Care US started working in Thailand?
Well, if you recall the history, the fall of Phnom Penh in Cambodia, when the Khmer Rouge took over the city. And as a result of that, many of the Cambodians fled to Thailand along the border. And they were setting up camps, and CARE was among the civil society organizations, international organizations that went and started, providing services to the refugees. So that was the beginning. So once they did, CARE does that in next to the Thai-Cambodian border, they had a country office set up in Bangkok. And they did that for several years. I was not working then. And then eventually they started expanding to development support because people in the Northeast Thailand, very poor at that time. And so that's how they grew from working in the non-Thai refugees from Cambodia to the more wider population Thai people.
In what year did it start?
1978.
1978. So our appreciated listeners, you hear and see that this is very often the case that Care US started at the occasion of a major refugee crisis to open an office in any region. So we hear that in 1978, Cambodian refugees fled in masses to Thailand, and this was a big humanitarian crisis. And until today, CARE is working with millions of refugees worldwide. Lucky enough, we don't have to open a lot of offices in these days because we are a global organization and present nearly everywhere. But if you remember Ukraine 2 years ago, then CARE globally was in the situation that we had to open offices and working spaces for our staff in Ukraine and also in some of the neighboring countries. Because in spite of being global, there are still some spots where CARE is not present, but it happens less and less nowadays. You have an enormous experience inside CARE, so more than 30 years. Looking back, maybe you are willing to share some of your personal stories as well. You told us, you shared that you were born in the US. How comes? Because you're Thai, right?
I have dual citizen, actually. Mm-hmm. My parents were, my father was doing his PhD in US. My parents just married and they traveled there. So my mother was more, there. Taking care, just accompanying at very first. But in those days, there was no family planning. So quickly, my eldest brother was born in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And the second older brother, was both two brothers there. And the courses of the studies I never understood, but my father was studying in Chicago for some years. And my mother was now taking care of the children, babies, and then they moved to Kansas. Mm-hmm. And that's where I was born, in Kansas.
Okay.
With a younger brother, so four brothers, all born in U.S. And but after my father, finished, and then it was like a scholarship, so he had come back and worked for Thailand, Thai government, which he was always happy to do that. And so we came back to Thailand.
What age did you?
I was around 5 years old.
So do you still remember some experiences of your childhood in the US?
Yeah, I remember going to the shelter because tornado, the tornado in Kansas.
So you had an emergency experience as well as a small child in the US.
Just going to the shelter, and it was quite exciting. And then, some few people I still know, that we were playing together at that time. But I lost track totally.
And your English, you trained as a small child already?
No, yes, because my parents were, my father was an education planner. So they decided to use English in the family for the children because we were in a American English-speaking environment. But when we came back, he also made another very important decision. With 4 of us, he took us to the international school in Bangkok. Which is very difficult, but we were born in the U.S., we had U.S. passports. He did not. He was totally Thai, and my mother's totally Thai. But being born in the U.S., you have this automatic system. So we had his passport, and international school in Bangkok only allows non-Thai. And so we were into school. They just recognized the U.S. passport, and we studied there. But yes, you must imagine everything's in English, very well educated, so very expensive. And my father was working with government. So they had a very difficult time, my father and mother, in sending us to school.
All the 4 of you?
Yes, all 4 of us, hoping that we would have a factor of success because we knew the English language. And those were way, so many years ago. So many years ago. So, but he was already, my father was so, far-sighted, seeing that this future, that education project. Eventually, however, when I reached more the high school, I guess the cost was increasing. So my parents decided that my 2 older brothers go to the States, and he knew somebody there, so they were living there. So now they're back in the U.S. Myself and my younger brother would continue, but we would go to Thai school. And because my father was doing, he's government, and then he's working in education, so we were able to go to a local Thai school, but it's open, has a very, for Thailand, has a very progressive curriculum, a lot of example talking, a lot of, expression. So that was good. I changed around 8th grade, and my brother did the same. And my mother, who was, she started doing her work as translating, because when she went abroad, she didn't enter any degree. She was somebody 4 children. But when she came back, she wanted a daughter. So the family ended up with a 5th, but no daughter. The youngest brother, 5 brothers.
And was it difficult for you to go back to Thailand as a child, or did you look forward to it?
I didn't know what you understand. It was just too small. So, but, in those days, you don't only go by plane. We went on a freight.
Really? On a ship?
Yeah, big ship.
Wow.
Because the cost, and then my parents were not rich people. So, my father...
This sounds quite adventurous for nowadays.
I only remember one incident on the boat that I bumped my head at a small cut, playing with my brothers. Okay. It was not a passenger ship, not a luxury
freight ship.
Yeah. And they have some space for some field passengers to rent. And my mother was still very young at that time, and so we had that. But I just remember snapshots, things like that.
But it must have been really a challenge for your parents to look after 4 young boys running around on a fridge.
Particularly my mother. I feel so attached to my mother. Yeah. My father was doing so many policy things, so busy, and that, but my mother was always with the show.
And you always were bilingual. You spoke Thai and English, or?
When they came to Thailand, that's why we went to that was another reason, I guess, that they went to the international school. Mm-hmm. Because it's all English, there was no Thai.
And you could not read and write in Thai at that time.
Right, but once you're in the country, you start having friends, you start picking up. But in the family, you always spoke English. My brother and I always spoke English.
That's really interesting.
Until And then we started going to Thai school. But when we were starting, by then we had been, we could speak Thai already by the time, 6th, 7th grade. But entering Thai school, I had to do many lessons on Thai language, literature, speaking, spelling.
Which is rather difficult to study, right?
So I'm a person with 2 languages, but not an expert in either. my English, my English is high school English because I graduated in Thailand. And my Thai language is missing all the basics of how to put we have 44 alphabet and so on. So I have nothing. And I had to study so much in Thai, just memorizing things.
But your Thai colleagues, would they notice that?
Yes, even today. When I go to make a presentation.
Yeah.
And if I'm expected to read, I won't be able to read fast enough. I'll stumble.
Okay.
And in my position as the national director, so often you're asked to do, give a speech, opening speech. And I can do a little bit better with no, script. But with script, I just couldn't read fast enough. And it's many high officials audience, and you had to say their name, this and this and this, and I would always have this, because the Thai alphabet, the letters all connected. You have to know you have to recognize words that are like listed like that. So that was one thing. And then, but I managed. So because I studied the Thai high school and Thai university and Thai master degree, it was all in Thai, so I survived. But I also think that I was able to take in Thailand. We have an examination to the university. It was my English that brought me in. But once I get into the Thai student, you start learning a lot more Thai, and less English, because the general Thai population, there's not so much learning in English. So by the time I graduated, and I started off, just like a employee of the Ministry of Health, Family Planning. My Thai was much better, but my English was so basic. But even then, for the ministry, it was a big deal. So I started there, and they say, okay, the days of family planning in the Ministry of Health, and they were seeking a lot of international funding. Because in those days,
so it was an asset that your English was so good.
Yes,
of course.
Yes, and I had to do writing papers for the Director General, and he was so happy, so proud in that. But it gets boring working with government, so that's why I left.
So that's a super interesting story, and we had many guests in the Care in Action podcast who shared with us how it is living abroad or being forced to live abroad. So you see, this is a completely different story of a Thai person who had the chance to live abroad, who came back and then had to struggle to learn the mother tongue properly. And you say that you sense it until today, that you have to concentrate and focus speaking in or writing in Thai, but your English, of course, is also excellent, because it's so often said that language is the main key ingredient to integration. Integration is so much debated at the moment in Europe, and I'm sure also here in Thailand, because what we do together as Care Austria and Raks Thai, which is Care Thailand, is that we work together on a children migrant learning center. It sounds a bit complicated, but it's easily explained. There are many migrant workers here in Bangkok, which is 11 million, right? Inhabitant city.
Bangkok is 11 million. The total migrant population in Thailand is around 5 million.
Yeah, so it's half the population of Bangkok is the migrant population, to say.
Around the country.
Around the country,
right.
Yes, that's true.
But let me explain a little bit, Andrea. We work in a province just outside Bangkok, and that province they call it the mini Myanmar, the mini Burma, because that has so many. It's a small province area-wise, but it has so many intense industries.
Food industry, right?
Yes, the main one is fisheries. And that uses almost 80% of the basic workers are non-Thai, are migrants. So in that particular area, when you go around and you were there just recently, you would see that the community of particularly the Myanmar or Burmese in Thailand is so large because this is a destination place, because once you have that concentration, there's a good community Thai and Burmese also share Buddhism a lot. And so they doing quite well, and that area which is more inland and more closer to Bangkok, the income is higher.
Mm-hmm. So we have 5 million, to be very clear, 5 million of migrant population all over Thailand,
right.
And Bangkok City is about 11 million.
Yeah.
And we are working in one of the outskirts of Bangkok,
right.
which is called Samut Sakhon, together, because the migrant workers that are working there in the food industry, mainly fishery industry, and you always highlight that they gain more than in other regions there, but still they are mainly poor people, right?
Right.
And the living condition
right.
is really dire.
They cannot, mostly they get only the minimum wage.
Mm-hmm. Can you share with us how much the minimum wage is?
It's around 350 baht.
Mm-hmm. Which is less than $100, right?
Yeah, I think it's around
$90.
$10. 150 baht?
350 baht?
Yeah. It's around $10.
7.
35.
Yeah, 7.
Yeah,
around 7.
Around that.
Mm-hmm.
But they get it overtime, so they have to work night, many hours. But once they're in Thailand, because they have no resources for coming into Thailand, they have to pay rent. And so they get very small rooms and shared rooms. And then they have children. The children have to stay in the same room as their parents. And in Myanmar, they have, the population growth is still very, very, very rapid. So they have families usually have 2 or 3 children or more. And now the special condition in Thailand is that Thailand allows the children to stay with parents. Where in some countries, like in Malaysia, Singapore, the migrant have to come alone, will not be able to bring parents. But Thailand, because we have, there's so many, we developed much later, and there's a big civil society movement pushing for migrants, so they should not be allowed to leave their family. Mm-hmm. So we have a situation where the government allows both the parents and children to live in Thailand. But even then, the key of the migrant population is some of them have full documentation. That it's like a work permit, a passport, and they're quite safe living in Thailand. Mm-hmm. But another, maybe 1/3 of the population is either semi-documented, with maybe not full document, coming in illegally and some kind of temporary pass, or totally no documentation, undocumented worker. So the children in Thailand, some of them in the center we went to, their parents don't have fully documented, the documents may be missing, and so they're at risk the same.
Their status is even more fragile than those who have documents.
Yes.
Yeah. And exactly about these children of this migrant population in Samut Sakhon we are talking at the moment, because they have mainly 2 options without coming to CARE's learning center. The smaller ones, they are locked in at home. And we had various times the possibility to visit the home of the migrant workers. It's really super simple, very often no electricity, very small space for many people, some of them working and the kids in between. And the larger children, the older ones, they run around in the streets, and which is also not such a good idea because lots of negative things might happen. So to say the Migrant Children Learning Center is really the opportunity for many of the children in Samut Sakhon. And I was really touched. I'm always moved after 30 years of having been working in NGO sector. I still allow myself to be very moved and touched when I see such a project like the Children's Center, which is not a very typical project if you look at the care world overall. But Care Austria is very dedicated to this because, first of all, we also have lots of refugee and migrant children in Austria. And it is really a very, very tragic moment that many of these children, they don't have any option or opportunity just because they were born as a migrant child. Yeah. So to provide access to education, healthy food, possibility to play, to do some sports, to interact and behave like children, this is really, and I really mean it, this is more than rewarding for all of us. Because we always talk about lost generations very quickly. And we talk about what we should do. And this is a super opportunity to really do something. And with relatively small amount, we can ease the day life of 200 children. It were so many yesterday and so many very young ones. There must have been a new wave of people, of children being born and of people coming in from Myanmar with their very small kids. And to provide concrete access to education, I think this is what we should do even more. And this is something that Care Austria takes very seriously. And we talk so much about refugee children and how they should behave and what they should do and what the parents should do, but it's not a one-way street. Also, the welcoming society should do something, and it should be more than talk. We have to walk the talk, and this is a good opportunity for us. And we are in that together, Care Thailand and Care Austria. And you will see it on social media if you follow us, that we will publish a lot of material just to let you get a feeling for how important it is to engage, especially for the younger generation. So, Promboon, if you look back, I mean, you have some decades to look back. What changed most in Thailand? If you look back when you were a child coming here, I bet that Bangkok looked completely different than nowadays, right? What is the first thought that comes to you?
Well, the urbanization. When we came back, of course, we lived in Bangkok, but even Bangkok has changed dramatically. And the size of the population, Bangkok is a small city. It's on the river, but now it's very, very high population, high intensity of population, a lot of traffic, and things are much more kind of global now. Kind of the whole range of the modernization has reached, particularly Bangkok. But as you know, my long experience working with care, and even before that, you see that Bangkok is like it's like, what do you call it? Like its own world. Then you have Thailand, and people in Bangkok, some of them never really realize how people are doing outside of the city, and far less migrant workers and their children. And they could live in Bangkok their whole life and just, then going to the beach. We have great beaches, so they can go to the beach, go to some of the tourist places, but then spend the time just in the private sector, because the private sector is so, so progressive. But they would lose that track. So we were very happy to have students come and do volunteer work, going to the different sites we work. We work in the typical 4 areas of care, like environment, women's empowerment, in disaster and humanitarian support, and we also work with children. It's one of, like you're seeing this project. So we think that we are here not only as a Care International, but as a local entity, trying to serve the Thai community to understand development in a more kind of thoughtful and way that is leading to results in the way that care is doing so proud of worldwide. So I think that's very important. We want to set example for other smaller organizations, and we want to show Thai people that development is not just charity. It's far more than just charity. It does a lot more of working people to make them empowered to decide by themselves.
So you tackled many, many interesting topics now, and dear listeners, you will always hear a little bit of Bangkok traffic in the background, because in spite of the fact that we master our tapes professionally, we will not be able to filter out totally the sound of Bangkok traffic. And this is already one of the most burning issues, not only in Europe. We talk a lot about the Green Deal and about how to reduce traffic. But even for me, who has been coming to Thailand quite on a regular basis in the last 20 years. And this is not only happening to Thailand, this is happening everywhere in the world, that the traffic, especially in the big cities, in the capitals, really exploded. And we have to act somehow. And many of you might have read in the last month that there is a pollution problem in Bangkok, that also many citizens complain dramatically about, because there is a black cloud over Bangkok. I saw it myself last time when I was here last year, because the air is so polluted and the climate is so strong that the pollution stays over the city. And this is also not the only place in the world where we face this problem. And this is why you have to consider that environmental approaches, they are never useless. Because we say so often in Austria, we're such a small country, or Europe is so small, if only us reduce our carbon emission, what does it help in Asia, for example? But I can assure you, dear listeners, that also here in Bangkok, there is quite a strong environmental debate ongoing, and that people here are also trying, and I saw so many examples in the last days, to reduce their carbon footprint. Maybe the same like us, not so much for the sake and the benefit of the whole world, but it's already an issue for all of us. So we have to do something in order to better our air quality, to better the climate in our cities. So we are all together in that, but it always makes sense to reduce your carbon emissions. This is also something that the children of Samut Sakhon already are learning, that they can contribute, even as small as they are, to reduce waste, to not throw away their waste in any places. And this is really something that starts in childhood, right? Was it an issue when you were small? Can you remember that?
Well, the thing, I guess, when we're small, people are a lot more, easy to throw trash out. But the trash was not like today. It was not a lot of plastic. It was things that would... things that they would make, packages were made by leaves. And so while they were, and the population was much less, so they were doing that. But now you see with the globalization, plastic is there and many other type of containers that don't dissolve easily. And so people are starting to realize that this is not the same. They on one hand, one side, they feel that they're modernized and proud to be, fast food and all of that. But at the same time, I think people have to be reminded that that's probably one of the key issues that, modernization has the positive and negative effect.
And would you say that this awareness is already taking some action here in Bangkok?
Well, there's in Bangkok, yes, the whole recycling is there. Many families, we are separating and making sure we buy less. I bring my own lunch to the office, so I don't have to bring plastic boxes, order out that. And young people, like my daughter is very active in what you call it, the trash collection and making sure the plastic doesn't go to the sea. And so it is there, but I think the government has to make sure the facilitation that this happens, that you want to separate your trash, but you have to have the right containers, and the garbage truck is picking up has to know how to handle it. You don't just put it all together in the same truck. So it is a transformation where government invests, not only people transforming only, but the government has to.
The system.
The system has to be very good.
It is really interesting because Vienna is very often, you have been many times to Vienna, it is very often perceived as quite clean city, right? Yeah. And we had an appointment with the office of the mayor of Vienna recently, and we had guests from Bosnia. And they said, it's so slow in Bosnia and we can't have this waste management. And it was really interesting what the representative of the city of Vienna said. It took us in Vienna 60 years 6 decades to come to the situation that we are now in. And it took millions and millions of constant investment in tax money. So it never goes fast. This is the message. Yeah. It is an ongoing process, and they have to put a lot of money, staff, and knowledge until today into it. Otherwise, it would not work like it works. Mm-hmm. So the message is, it's good that awareness is already there, but it will take longer until really a good working system is established, and it never happens overnight. That's the message behind. So Promboon, that's a bit the flip side of globalization, because when I was at university 30 years ago, I was raised with the idea that globalization is something good and something that we should strive for. And as a matter of fact, it is also a consequence of globalization that the two of us work together so closely, because we are part of a global confederation. And in spite of the fact that we try to reduce or avoid our carbon footprint, from time to time you can't avoid traveling in a global organization with a purpose. It is not avoidable totally, but it is reducible, right? You mentioned it already. To be local is so key for you, but being local and being part of a global confederation, isn't that the asset in the end?
Yes, that's where we are now. To be local, I think the connection is very important. If you become too local, then you become, you don't experience what development internationally is. You don't get the context and all that. You don't have the exchange. But to operate locally, effectively, you have to know the global.
Absolutely.
And that's why we feel that this is, being part of CARE International, you see double parts. And it's not always easy. CARE International is not a high-level club. It's a lot of work and a lot of, systems, a lot of accountability measures that can be very difficult for small organizations. But you know that this is making that example that I want to demonstrate, that a good organization, nonprofit, has to be with accreditation and that kind of like the right standards, the right transparency measures.
So as CARE Austria, for us, it is our biggest asset, I would say, to be a strong Austrian organization and at the same time being part of a strong global confederation. I do thank you for this interesting conversation and for providing us some insights. And I'm really looking forward to cooperate with you and Raks Thai also in the future for the benefit of the children of Samut Sakhon. Thank you, Promboon.
Thank you. And Andrea, you've been like a good friend for so many years, you and your team. And it's really helped these children, which otherwise probably wouldn't be able to operate this. So I'm very thankful, and hopefully we will meet again in Vienna soon.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. This was CARE in Action, the podcast of CARE Austria with Andrea Bastow-Hager. For further information, go to care.at. Sponsored by CC Real.